Hi, and welcome to Canute Radio. This is the Delphine Everson Show, the coolest show around. To the sea or not the sea? That's the question.
We'll forgive you for that now, Aidan. This week it's all about the sea, coastal erosion and some heroes.
Exactly. We are not a doom and gloom station. Canute exists to look at the problems and find solutions. But first, our resident weatherman, Adam, the genius.
Well, despite global warming skeptics, the debate is practically over. From up there, in space, NASA has observed that 2 trillion tonnes of land ice has melted away since 2003. 160 gigatons of ice a year from Greenland alone. Now that means a small but steady rise in sea levels, and from there, it isn't rocket science to work out that low-lying land is under threat from flooding, especially during storm surges and high tide.
Have to stop you there, Adam. This is a show where we let you, the listeners, do the talking. So if your house, village, town or way of life has been or might be lost to the sea, we want to hear from you.
Phone, blog or email us. Meanwhile, our reporter, Lottie, who's recovering from a nasty cold. Get well soon. Anyway, Lottie is in search of evidence that one of our best-loved seaside towns is under threat.
Thanks, Aidan. Anyway, I'm here at Southwold, where the amazing writer George Orwell lived. He was called Eric Blair then. No relation to Tony, by the way. Yep, he's the guy that wrote Animal Farm in 1984. Anyway, it's also the home of a local hero, well, hero for some, who's called King Canute of Southwold.
After the old king that tried to stop the tide coming in by commanding it to stop.
Yes, except this Canute, whose real name is Mr. Boggis, has defied government red tape by protecting the cliff and stopping his house from falling into the sea, at least for the moment. But let him tell you.
I have lived here almost from the time that I was born. My memories go back to childhood, so you can say that's I have a clear memory for over 70 years. Unfortunately, the erosion rates have increased rapidly. In 1997, I put in a small pilot scheme to stabilise the beach. This worked quite well, but it was was basically interfering to a certain extent with the sedimentary stream. So in the year 2000, I put in the first pilot banks to test out for sacrificial sea defence, and this worked extremely well. So in the year of 2000, summer of 2002, late summer, I got on with major works, which meant by the spring I got 28,000 tonnes of material into place on the beach to sacrifice instead of the cliffs. Again, this functioned very well, but it upset bureaucracy to a certain extent because the powers that be had decreed that it was impossible to do anything about protecting the land here and that the cost was too much for anyone, and I had succeeded in doing it on my own part without relying on government grants or anything like that. It made a lot of people look rather ridiculous. In the end, by October of 2005, we had placed over 250,000 tonnes of soils in front of the cliff and produced a really feasible and working system. All it takes is a bit of imagination and guts enough to face the sea instead of running away from it. What would I say to those people who suggest that one should put their hands up in the air and run away? Is would they if it was in their own back garden? This is my garden and my neighbours, and therefore I consider it right that we should protect it. If government does not want to protect it, and bureaucracy does not want to protect it, it is still should be the freedom of every man to protect his home and to help protect his neighbour's home. And that's what my fight through the courts of recently has been about. It has been about the rights of people throughout the coastline of Britain to protect their homes.
Wow, one man against the sea and bureaucracy. Awesome.
One small step by one man, but if we all took a step like that, it would surely be a gigantic leap for mankind in the right direction. This is the station that explores solutions. We here on Canute believe that by working together, we can make a difference.
Take the people of Bordsey, for example.
Where?
A small village on the Suffolk coast with some Martello towers.
Oh yeah, massive brick-built forts on the coast built to protect us from Napoleon, but he never showed up. Also the home of RAF radar stations during World War II.
This isn't a history lesson, Aidan. Fact is, the sea is likely to break through the small spit of shingle and flood thousands of acres of good food-producing farmland. Aldborough could become an island in only 20 years.
Yeah, that's where people who can afford it go to retire, isn't it? Benjamin Britten and all that.
Retired people need protection too, Aidan. But when the people of Bordsey and some local villages realised that the Environmental Agency,
Whose job it is to protect us.
as I was saying, when they realised that the EA were going to make space for water,
Which is government speak for letting the sea come in and flood the area because they won't find the money to protect everyone.
this isn't a political station, Aidan. Anyway, let's hear from what the movers and shakers in Bordsey did, from the people who made it happen.
Well, these towers were Napoleonic defence towers, and this group of four, including this one, were built in 1809.
On purchase, did it ever occur to you that you might be faced later on in life with this coastal erosion taking place?
I have to say that we had absolutely no idea that this might be a problem because we had quite a large stretch of land in front of us before it got to the high tide mark. And in addition to that, there were a number of defences in place in the sea, in particular wooden groins, that were being constantly maintained by the Environment Agency and which we expected to continue to be maintained. It wasn't until later that we realised that this maintenance, in fact, was stopped. And shortly after the maintenance was stopped, the groins themselves were removed because they became a health and safety hazard on the beach. And as soon as that happened, and a major storm came afterwards, all the shingle on the beach was washed away, and it exposed the tower then to immediate erosion risk. Well, the permanent solution was designed by the coastal engineers and was agreed by the Environment Agency and the local council as being what was required. The problem was that it was going to cost 2.5 million to put in place, and the government had run out of funding. And in addition to that, we didn't, as a particular community, qualify for the grant funding in any case. So we had to try to find another way of raising the money. It was then that somebody came on the scene who, in fact, had worked for a major global company, and he devised a scheme, and that consisted of persuading the local landowners, who were farmers, that it was in their interests to gift pockets of their land to a charitable trust. And that charitable trust would then apply to the local planning department to change the use of the land from agricultural to residential building use. After a number of years, the charitable trust was able to gain this planning consent, and the sites were then marketed on the open market, and that sale of land has raised the money required to pay for all of the works which are now being undertaken. The real gain in raising this money has been that we have saved hundreds of acres of farmland behind us. We've saved all the infrastructure which would have been at risk for the local communities. And by infrastructure, I mean roads, water pumping stations, electricity substations, all of which were at risk from flooding. An immense amount of private property and commercial property has been saved in the same way.
You haven't said much lately, Adam.
I'm awestruck, but it's reminding me of the people of Dunwich.
The city lost to the sea? Wow, they say they can still hear the bells from the churches under the sea, still tolling the warning.
Yeah, well, maybe. But I'm talking about what the few villagers who remain there are doing to provide their own natural sea defence strategy.
Well, let's find out. Unfortunately, I'm hearing my producer yelling, "Time's up." So until next time, keep the emails and blogs coming through with your ideas and info. Your views matter, so make every one of them count. Now, it's goodbye from everyone in the studio. Welcome to this special edition of Canute Radio. With coastal erosion being such a pressing problem, we thought we should see what you think. We sent our reporters Aidan and Arabella out to Suffolk to see what some local beach users had to say.
What is your opinion on coastal erosion?
Well, obviously it's inevitable around here, but that we should be doing something to protect the coast.
Well, it's a mixed bag, isn't it? You can protect one area and cause damage to another area by so protecting it. So you've got to sort of really think it through properly.
Well, it's not an opinion, there's a fact, isn't there? There's coast is being eroded by the elements and we can't sort of do much to stop it completely. But hopefully we can take measures to kind of reduce the pace at which it happens.
It's a concern for my children's children probably, and a concern for people who are close to the coast, more so at the moment.
I think it's very sad that we'll be losing lots of our houses and part of our coastline to the sea. But I think it's a natural occurrence, and the sea has to take its course. So if you prevent it somehow, it'll just back up further along the coast somewhere.
I suppose really and truly they need to look at the whole issue. But for us people who live on the coast, obviously that's going to be a key thing for us to want something done about it. All along the cliffs. I mean, that's a shame when you go there now and some parts of Nugu areas, what you used to be able to walk along, and it is a shame. But it is a natural thing, I suppose. But whether you accept it or not, and whether you put the money into it or not, who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, and what do you think the government should be doing?
Putting money into it.
Why do you think that?
Because once it's gone, it's gone. And it's important to preserve it.
Well, they should certainly put more money into it, but ultimately I think the sea is a huge force and we're not necessarily going to be able to stop it.
Tricky one. I don't know. I mean, obviously with resources they have to be split across a number of things, right? So I haven't really, in all honesty, looked at the detail of what other projects they're investing in.
Do you think the government should be doing more?
I think they need to do more. I mean, after all, when you put that in terms of the money they spend on wars and things, if they brought all the troops home, they'd have more than enough money to spend on the whole coastline. So yeah.
What would you be prepared to do in your local area to protect the coastline?
Well, I guess the bottom line is the cost, isn't it? And whether local people are going to be willing to stump up any money, stump up their time to do something about it. I mean, we're visitors to Southwold. I might have a slightly different perspective if I actually lived here and had a property here.
So if you lived here, would you be prepared to make an impact and try and bring around a change?
Yeah. I think definitely, yeah.
From the basics, I suppose, not taking too many stones home. Hey, boys, do we take too many stones home?
No.
Why don't we take them home?
Because the beach would be covered in sand.
I suppose fundraising, raising awareness. I don't know what else you could do, really. I suppose petitioning the government.
Well, there is plenty to think of there. Thanks for listening to this Canute Radio special. See you next time.
Hi, and welcome to Canute Radio. This is the Delphine Everson Show, the coolest show around.
What a lineup we have for you. Interviews, reports, hot tips on global warming. Sorry, hot tips that is in how to prevent the globe from getting any hotter. But before all that, over to Adam, our weather genius.
It's really cold. Yeah, and that's seasonal. But what isn't seasonal is the very fact that in the last 2 years, we've had the mildest winter months on record, the wettest August. In fact, the World Meteorological Organisation have shown that the last 10 years have been the warmest on record. And by the way...
Whoa! Hold on there, Adam. Once he stops, you can't get a word in.
In a recent poll, 90% of young people said that they wanted their government to do whatever it takes to combat global warming.
And where did those young pollsters come from, Aidan?
Well, Delphine, I'll tell you. The USA, Brazil, India, even South Africa, but not from the UK.
Which is why we launched Radio Canute, to raise awareness on the greatest crisis facing us right now. It's not the credit crunch, it's the environmental catastrophe crunch.
You said it, Delphine. And the question is, what can we, as young people, do about it? Raising awareness is one good start, but it's no good crying into our mobile phones and doing nothing.
Which is why we've got some of the coolest and funkiest minds filling us in on how to stop the spin.
As well as giving us a decarbonising action package to save our planet Earth.
And no, it's not just about those cute cuddly polar bears running out of ice floes to swim to.
Well, I'm not sure if I'd get within cuddling distance of a bear, polar or otherwise.
Adam, we don't have to go to such extremes to do something practical, which is why on Canute Radio, with you, our listeners' help, we can turn this crazy thing around.
We want you, our scrumptious radio heads, to phone in or blog us with your hot tips on what you will do to reduce your carbon footprint.
And while they are reaching for their phones, over to our reporter.
This is Lottie Leverell in the lab of Dr. Cool, one of the youngest doctors around. So, Doctor, what is a carbon footprint?
Cool question. Footprint is like the mark of your tootsies walking over wet sand, except it is like we're walking over everything, the sky as well. Every time we use energy like burning fossil fuels like coal, gas or oil, start a car, a train or a jet plane, charge your MP3 players, we release tons of CO2, which doesn't disappear. It becomes carbon dioxide, a gas which ends up in the atmosphere.
But that's always happened, hasn't it?
Not at this pace. Normally, the rainforest and plants recycle CO2, turning it into raw stuff for food like protein, starch, and sugars. But we are producing too much to recycle. So the surplus CO2 gas forms in the atmosphere like insulation in the loft. Heat can't escape, so the house warms up. Good for your house, but not good for the earth. Heat is trapped and the earth heats up. That's global warming. Makes the weather go bananas.
Sorry to butt in, but we have our first caller. Good afternoon.
Yeah, great show, Delphine. But I've got a hot tip that could save truckloads of energy.
Sounds great. What is it?
Turn off those vicious energy suckers, the standby lights on your PCs and tellies. Like in 15 countries in the EU, the total energy waste was reckoned to be 94 billion kilowatt hours, the equivalent of about 12 coal or nuclear power stations.
Is that true, Doc?
Completely on the button.
Calls are jamming the switchboard.
I agree with the last caller. And get this, digital display clocks, forget them. Get a good old wind-up alarm clock. They use no energy except your finger and thumb to wind it. And they're fun and funky. And oh yeah, they tell the time.
I hadn't heard of that one, thanks. Now, keep them coming or email us on www.canute.net and we'll be sure to get your ideas on the next broadcast.
We've got a caller with a different point of view, Delphine.
Okay, caller, you're on air.
Yeah, well, the whole global warming gig is a scam.
Is it?
It's a conspiracy, cooked up by a bunch of crooked scientists and failed politicians to stop us enjoying ourselves, driving big cars and flying to ski resorts. Global warming with some of the best snow conditions in the Alps for years. You've got to be kidding.
You heard that, Dr. Cool, and how do you answer it?
Global warming doesn't mean it doesn't get cold sometimes. It upsets the weather patterns, so you get extremes at unlikely times. To global warming deniers, I say quit your belly aching. The rest of us are getting to work towards a sustainable future.
Well, you can't say that Canute Radio isn't controversial. We just hope that it starts a debate instead of indifference, so keep it coming. Aidan?
We are nearly out of time, but the next Delphine talk show follows up the issues that affect us all. Coastal erosion. And that doesn't mean people living by the sea, it's everyone. If the seasides go, holiday makers all over the UK will lose out. Many a kid's bucket and spade, Sandy Beach will be lost forever. I remember when I was a little boy, I used to love Southwold Beach.
Oh, here's a tissue, Aidan. So, tune in next time to Canute Radio. And now, a big goodbye from everyone here in the studio.